When you say you regret not having kids, what you are really saying is, I regret not having best possible outcome I could have had from having children, even though I might never have gotten that. Hey everyone, welcome back to Lives on Reddit. Don't forget to subscribe to be a for lifer. I'm a divorced, child-free woman in my late 50s and have happened to have a few conversations lately with people who have either expressed regret at not having children or who assume I must now regret my choice not to have them as I am all alone, while they have their kids or grandkids. People assume I must be lonely and regretful in my situation. My ex-husband and I chose not to have children as parenthood never appealed to us for a number of reasons. The cost, my tocophobia, a medical condition he had which came back with a huge risk of being passed on, our love of travel and our hobbies. He was a keen painter and I loved to visit museums, many of which are not child-free, and we would have had to give those things up if we had kids. We separated in our late 40s when he became a devout born-again Christian after his brother did following their parents' death 18 months apart, and converted him. And as someone non-religious, it became an irreconcilable difference for us because I wasn't prepared to change or convert with him. A shame because I thought we'd retire together, but as an introvert, I'm actually far more okay with living alone than people expect. We all need some social interaction, even as introverts, and I have friends and extended family, including nieces and nephews, so I do have those kinds of relationships with younger people for that. I'm not alone in this world by any means, but being alone at 10 p.m. on Wednesday nights doesn't bother me either. The thing I've noticed is that when people assume I have regrets or are expressing their regrets, they are always assuming the best possible outcome would have happened if I or they had children, and not one of those many negative outcomes that could have happened. They are always regretting not having well-adjusted, healthy, and successful kids, and they always assume my children would have been healthy and successful if I had them. They assume they'd or I'd have a good relationship with hypothetical offspring that would be in adulthood by now. But they never assume the different outcomes that could have happened if I or they chose a different path 25 years ago and had children. When people say they regret not having kids and are jealous of those with families, they are jealous of Mick and Tammy, who had 3 healthy kids, one who became a doctor, one who became a lawyer, and the other currently in university studying to become a teacher, that have good relationships with their kids, and who now have a few healthy and mostly well-behaved grandkids who come and visit a couple times a month and celebrate Christmas with them every second year in cute matching pajamas. They're not jealous of Gary and Lisa, who are changing the diapers of their severely autistic 28-year-old son. They're not jealous of Jeff and Nancy, whose adult son married a narcissist who barely allows him to speak to them, who uses their grandchild to manipulate them into giving them money they should be saving for retirement, and who was such a bee to their adult daughter that she took a job on the other side of the country to get away from her toxic sister-in-law. They don't have that happy grown-up family at the table at Christmas time that Nancy dreamed of when they decided to try and conceive. They're not jealous of Mark and Michelle, who are currently dealing with their problem teenager who has been caught shoplifting multiple times, keeps skipping school, has harassed girls in his class, sneaks onto disturbing alt-right online forums even after having his internet access taken away, and it's basically a creep in the making even though they did everything right and are decent people. They just got a crappy kid, and he has a 10-year-old sister who is not an incel in the making or anything but is super difficult with ADHD. They're not jealous of Paul and Cynthia, who have their 28 and 25-year-old daughters living with them because they can't get jobs in this economy, and will have to delay their retirement and are putting off the travel they dreamed of doing when the nest was empty, because they're stuck helping their daughters pay back their student loans. They're not jealous of Jason and Angela, whose son has been arrested a bunch of times and is in and out of jail and is the shame of both families, even though, again, Jason and Angela didn't actually do anything wrong. They just birthed the bad egg. And their daughter moved to another province because she hated being associated with him because there are only 2 degrees of separation somewhere like Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. They're not jealous of Robert and Heather, whose daughter Maddie fell in love with the wrong crowd and got pregnant at 17, and then were put on the hook to raise their grandchild because Maddie was completely unfit to do it, and it was that or foster care and likely never seeing their grandchild. Now they are chasing around a 4-year-old in their 50s and wondering if they will ever retire because they are pouring money into daycare for their grandchild. Last I heard, Maddie was in jail after breaking probation for a string of drug-related problems, and their other daughter has a half-finished degree and can't even hold down a job at Starbucks because she hates working and is depressed but won't commit to treatment. They're at the age where you are meant to get your life back after serving your time with little kids, but are dealing with a tantruming 4-year-old and a 24-year-old daughter who sits on the couch all day, doesn't want to work, and won't go to therapy even though she needs to. They are all jealous of James and Betty, whose son grew up to play in the NHL on a big contract and funded their retirement in their 50s. And Kevin and Jennifer, whose daughter grew up to be a well-known actress or a TV presenter and makes a ton of money and bought them a big house and pays for them to travel overseas every year, and who are only still working because they have jobs they genuinely love and find rewarding. But they're not jealous of Susan, who spent most of her life a divorced, struggling single mother who barely made ends meet and never got to have a life for herself. Because once Steve realized that having kids is not sunshine and rainbows, he pieced the frick out and left her with 3 kids under 6 to do all the work on her own, other than maybe swinging by once or twice a year to be a Disneyland dad with a pile of presents that were way better than Susan's. Susan's kids might be out of the nest now, but she is broke from working mom jobs for 25 years, has a tiny retirement fund of 50, and never got to do anything for herself or with her potential. They're not jealous of Brian and Melissa, who haven't shared a bed in 10 years but are staying in their loveless marriage for the kids' sake, until the youngest son goes off to college in 2022. Or maybe they will just keep living together because they don't know if they can afford 2 households and splitting everything at their age. All fake names, but all situations that I've seen firsthand. Or they are people known to friends who have told me about their situation. They are jealous of Jack and Mary, who have their kids and grandkids visit them in the hospital, help them live independently for as long as they can, and only put them in a nursing home as very last resort when their health starts to really fail them, but still visit frequently. But they're not jealous of John and Dorothy, whose kids dump them in the cheapest nursing home they could find, never call, never visit, and can't wait for them to die so they can get their hands on the inheritance, and never visit them even though Jack and Dorothy were never bad parents. They are jealous of Joan and George, who have their children living in the same city as them, who can drive them to doctor's appointments and visit them regularly, but they are not as jealous of Linda and Charles, who don't have their kids for support because their kids moved to Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, and who has only come back to Nova Scotia or Saskatchewan every 2 to 3 years, or they are busy with their own lives or work or kids and don't have time or desire, to be honest, to be much support to their parents. People seem to assume that if they had kids, they'd have gotten the Mick and Tammy or James and Betty or Jack and Mary experience of parenthood, and not a crappy experience of parenthood. But you don't know what you're going to get, and that is why I'm glad I never had kids. Yes, maybe it would have been nice to have been a mother if I got the Tammy or Betty experience of motherhood, but I wouldn't be happier if I got the Michelle or Lisa or Susan experience. If I got those experiences, I'd no doubt regret having kids. And while I don't regret my decision to not have kids, if I was going to have regrets, I'd rather regret not having kids than regret having them. It is easier to regret the idea of a positive outcome, but a positive outcome was never guaranteed if you had chosen that path. Having kids is literally opening the door to your home and letting a stranger walk in and live there, and you just don't know what you will get. And you can't kick them out if you don't like what walks in. It is easy to regret the loss of not having a son that becomes a doctor, and a daughter that becomes a lawyer, and a couple of cute, well-behaved grandchildren that visit twice a month. But you might never have gotten that anyway. You could have gotten the kid in diapers at 28, or in prison at 22, or pregnant at 17, and handing you the child to raise when they go to jail. Problem is that a lot of people believe having children will heal their wounds and make everything better. fulfill their emptiness they have inside, whether they are conscious about it or not. It doesn't work that way. Also disgusting is to put the responsibility and burden of your future on your children, making them as a retirement plan. Yeah, giving them life, but life as a servant, manipulated and guilt-tripped. Also, it's fun to brag about how perfect your children are, of course, thanks to your parenting. Disordered parents are awful. Also, children as a goal or checkpoint of life that's necessary to gain to be really alive and human. Like, how's that possible to be more human because you have children? You are worse and selfish if you don't have children. How can I be selfish? I understand the whole thing that society needs people to exist, but making another human being just for that, not ever considering if it's something you would like to do, and how your input would be on the child, that is irresponsible. Lonely? Someone who doesn't have a relationship with herself will always lack something and feel loneliness. Trying to use somebody to repair something or make you feel good, it's unhealthy. Whoa, 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 whoa. Don't leave. Subscribe. Be a for lifer.